Nashville Design Week is a platform for bold collaborations and conversations that promote idea sharing, engage and educate the public, and strengthen our city's design culture. We shine a spotlight on designers who are shaping the city's future and facilitate critical conversation about the industry's growth and impact.
2020 has challenged us in every way. A tornado, a pandemic, and a long overdue reckoning with racial inequity. And as we close in on a formative election, we are excited to focus on the power of design to reshape communities and to actively support equity. We are proud to introduce a diverse range of speakers covering everything from racial injustice and inequity to diversity and inclusion, connectivity, and allyship, all through the lens of design.
We are fortunate to partner with design leaders who are invested in the future of Nashville's design community. These leaders see Nashville Design Week as essential and support making design discourse accessible to all. Thank you endlessly to our 2020 sponsors for helping us bring Nashville Design Week to life. Thank you to founding silver sponsor, Hastings. Hastings is a boutique architecture and interior design firm of 75 professionals who are deeply committed to the service of clients, producing award-winning, thoughtful, and impactful architecture. Thank you to silver sponsor, Watkins College of Art and O'Moore College of Architecture and Design at Belmont University. The Watkins College of Art and the O'Moore College of Architecture and Design celebrate the power of art and design to transform people, communities, cultures, and the world. Thank you to our copper sponsors, Elevated Outcomes, Interface, Smith G Studio, and Textures Nashville. Thank you to our bronze sponsors, Aberdeen Studio, Alfred Williams & Company, Circa Creative Studios, Dade, EOA Architects, Earl Swenson Associates, Emmanuel Zeitlin Architects.
And thank you to our media partners, Dezeen, Lightning 100, and Nashville Interiors, and to creative directors Lindsay and Alan Lassiter.
Nashville Design Week is proud to be a fiscally sponsored project of the Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville, a nonprofit organization. Nashville Design Week is an entirely volunteer effort made possible by the tireless dedication of our team. Now, let's get started.
Hi everyone, my name is Bonnie Blattman and I am a volunteer program coordinator for Nashville Design Week 2020. On behalf of Nashville Design Week, I'd like to welcome you to Building New Tables, creating a diversity and inclusion strategy in the creative industry. The hosts for today's program are Lakeithia Nicole Anderson and Brittany Cole. Lakeithia is founder of For Us, the agency, a creative agency that works with Black-owned brands and talent to expand reach and impact. Brittany Cole is a speaker, author, and the CEO of Creative Thrivers, a leadership development firm that partners with organizations to engage, develop, and retain diverse talent through targeted leadership development. We thank you for being a part of Nashville Design Week 2020, and with that, I will turn it over to our host.
All right, thank you so much, Bonnie, and thank you everyone for being here at 8:30 in the morning here in Nashville. I'm so excited to be here with Brittany to lead this conversation today about building new tables. So just a little bit information about what we're going to cover today. We're going to start off with an introduction to our panelists that's joining us here today. And then Brittany will lead us in a discussion and a micro talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We will have question and answer with our panelists about it. And then we will also have a poll that is already in there. I want you guys to take a moment as we're doing introductions and answer the poll question. And then we will dive into communication and marketing and also action plans. And I will do a reading right before that. And then we would do another question and answer. And we are also, before we leave, looking to do audience questions. So if you have a question as we're discussing, please put it in the chat box and we will get to it, or you can answer it at the end. And then we're done. Everyone get a stretch, go get another cup of coffee, and we are ready to go for the day. So I'm super excited. Thank you for our panelists that is here today. A little information about what you're learning this morning is called Building New Tables, Creating a Diversity and Inclusion Strategy in the Creative Industry. Does your team have a strategy for diversity that includes Black, Indigenous, and people of color community? Join this roundtable discussion on how to create and implement a DEI strategy that includes, people of color. Topics we will discuss today is communications, digital marketing, social media, leadership development, strategic partnerships to help participants identify actionable steps to engage and serve the diverse communities here in Nashville. So I want to introduce our panelists today. We have Melissa Watkins. You guys know her as Fab Glance. I call her the queen of social media. She is a stylish storyteller that with a flair of fashion and desire to help people reach their goals via digital strategy. She started her website, fabglance.com, more than 10 years ago as a simple fashion blog. As the internet has changed, her website and goals have changed as well. Quickly, the website and her social media platforms turned into a little slice of personality on the internet. Melissa now gives you tips on how to be a better blogger, social media influencer, discusses plus size, and continues to answer your fashion questions. She loves helping people tell their stories. We have Tiffany Perkins. She is a digital marketer and a content creator, a graduate of the University of Tennessee. Tiffany has built a career for herself as a digital marketing strategist, SEO specialist, and digital content creator. In her day job, she helps multi-sized businesses expand digitally and multiply their customer base. She is also currently the campaign manager for Chelsea Camp, who is running for the Circuit Court Clerk in Montgomery County, and the social media manager for Arthur and Clarksville District 12, Councilman Hopeful Joe. When she's not helping clients maximize their digital footprint, she's creating content for her blog, Tiff Says Go, or using her platforms to host events and support creatives and Black women. Tiff is the creator of the Black Women in Creative Spaces Creator Summit, an event for Black female creators and entrepreneurs, as well as the Nashville Blogging Collective. She has been featured in XO Nicole, Voyage, ATL, and It's My Hair magazine. And lastly, we have Tatiana Johnson, DJ Crop Top. And if you've seen her DJ, she lives up to that name. She is a jack of all trades, whether it is journalism, film production, DJing, furniture design, or creating content for her brand, I Place Glitter and clients. She takes her love of design and hip hop to another level. Her background stems from hip hop's first print magazine, The Source, MTV UK, overseeing content for the flagship boutique Libeskind, Berlin, Later Gun magazine, and more. Keeping an open mind, the New York native found herself in Nashville as design project manager for the Country Music Association, honing in directly, working with the biggest country music festival in the world. From there, she expanded her love of festival and live events at Eventbrite. Now taking her passion to side hustle and side hustle to career path, the MTSU graduate continues to progress as she's implemented her own creative agency, Made You Look Studios. Taking a leap of faith and making that passion full-time, she serves as the director of digital marketing strategy, taking on clients from restaurants to bars to photographers and more. And she also serves as the director. The digital team at our heart, creativity has no limits. It's only the beginning. Thank you for our panelists for joining us. And I'm just going to let Brittany take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Lakithia. And thank you so much again to all of our amazing panelists for being here. And thank you to all of you who are watching this, joining us live this morning. Really excited about this conversation. As we're getting started, you already tell by the title of the conversation today, we're going to be diving into diversity and inclusion. And really, as Lakithia and I were talking about, what is our goal? Kind of what do we want to see happen on the other side of this? So as we get closer to the 10 o'clock hour, our goal is that you're able to walk away today with some actionable strategies that you can implement, that you can take back to your organization and say, hey, we've been talking about this. We've had an awakening in 2020. Perhaps you're at an organization where you may not have a chief diversity officer. You may not be at a big corporation, but within your company, you've started the conversations around what does diversity and inclusion look like for us. And our goal with this roundtable today is that you walk away with some things that you can take back to that same room at your organization, whether you're virtual or you're back in the studio or back at the firm, and you can actually put those intentions into action through implementation. So that's our goal for today. I'm going to kick us off just with a brief kind of overview to make sure that we're all talking the same language. So let me just go ahead and I love to have conversations. This is going to be a conversation. It's going to be fun today. So I want to ask you, when you think about, let's stick with the two words that are in the title. So if you had to define diversity and inclusion, how would you define either of those two words? Just pick one. What is diversity? What is inclusion? What definition would you have for those two words? Go ahead and share with us in the chat. How would you define diversity and how would you define inclusion? And as you are doing that, I'm going to throw some visuals up. I promise they are for me because I love this topic and I could talk about it for the rest of the afternoon. So to keep me on track, I'm going to share a quick visual with us, just to keep us close to time. So of course, these words have been everywhere, however you get your news, with whatever outlet is your preference. We have not been able to escape these words this year. They have shaped even why we're here today in terms of the theme of reshaping design with Nashville Design Week. And so when we think about these two words, I think one of the goals of this kind of mini micro talk is that we walk away with really understanding what these words mean, and not what they mean from a theoretical perspective, but what they mean in terms of the actions, again, that we take when we are working in our workplaces, with our clients, with our teammates, to actually live out the words. And so this mini segment that I'm going to share with you today is actually a part of a free training that we put together at Career Thrivers to help organizations just like yours. And so I want to let you know that I'm going to share with you kind of a broad overview of 2 out of the 3 main components that are a part of this. But this 5 essentials for getting started prioritizing your DEI strategy at your organization is available at careerthrivers.com. You click on the DEI tab, and you can access it. You can share it with your team. It's information out there so we can demystify, I don't know what to do or where to get started. So my name is Brittany Cole. A little about me, Nashville native. So I'm extremely excited to be here in Nashville Design Week. I have the pleasure to be married to an architect who introduced me to Nashville Design Week. But we are both Nashville natives, both UT graduates, and I spend the majority of my days now in moments just like this. So moments where I'm getting to share with really excited, really engaged professionals, whether they are business owners or folks that are a part of a corporation or maybe a nonprofit that are really interested in taking the words of what does it mean to be more diverse and inclusive and actually implementing them within their organizations. So through really my background of speaking and coaching and consulting, I founded Career Thrivers. And again, we are just really on a mission to partner with organizations to help you really do 2 things. One, typically there's this conversation when we're talking about D&I, when leaders will look around their company and say, hey, we notice we don't have a lot of diversity. So perhaps we need to get better at our recruiting. And what we would challenge you to think about is, yes, and that may be the case. But the bigger question is, have you cultivated a culture with which once you recruit that diverse talent, they believe that they belong at your organization and in your space, and they believe that they can thrive there? So again, if you have questions about how to get started, if you want kind of the full gamut of what we'll review today, make sure you jot down that link. I'll throw it in the chat as well once we open it up for Q&A. These days, just to kind of dovetail on this idea of D&I and kind of the one-on-one aspect, really the difference maker for inclusive cultures within companies really revolves around the awareness and actions of allies. So this is the bulk of the curriculum where we spend a lot of time. And when we say action, we mean action. It's not enough just to have these conversations, but how are you learning? How are you learning before you listen? So how are you, I'm saying how are you, but how are we all doing our due diligence to seek out the plethora of resources that we have to come to the table informed at some level as we are listening? And then how do we do the work, particularly as leaders, to be more inclusive, to expand our breadth and depth of experiences so that we are building on that cultural competency because we actually have experience with the BIPOC community? And then how are we modeling sponsorship, again, moving beyond mentorship to support diverse talent within our companies? So here are the 2 very broad overview questions I want to help us with today. That grayed out middle portion is the part that we'll skip, but again, it's available at the DEI tab at careerthrivers.com. So we're going to level set on what is DEI. I appreciate you all putting those definitions in the chat. We'll talk through some quick definitions, and then last but not least, how do we implement, right? So what are those actionable ways that you can get started even today? So I always like to start here. Regardless of the topic around DEI, we're going to get into some good conversation with our panelists around what this looks like in the creative space as well. But I think the expectation always has to be that I may be uncomfortable. I may be presented with information that challenges my thoughts, challenges my beliefs, challenges what I thought I knew. And when we're working in this space, that's all a part of the journey. That's okay. And as a matter of fact, I would say that's really where change happens. So the whole journey of learning is really to challenge us to a degree where we unlearn, and then we can relearn in a way that we're able to implement new insights and new information that maybe we were not aware of before. So if you have that feeling, if your heartbeat starts to speed up a little bit, if your face starts to get a little bit red, this is okay. Actually, this is good. All right. So expect that today. So what is diversity, equity, the word that's not in the title, but I would say the most important word of the three, and inclusion. So I love Post-it notes. They're all around my desk right now. I mean, they're everywhere. And so if we were writing a definition that is succinct enough to put on a Post-it note, here are the definitions that I would share with us. Diversity just means difference. That's all it means. Now, if we were to pass this mic around, or if everyone were to hop on screen and give their definition, we would probably have as many definitions as there are people that are watching this right now. And so simply put, diversity just means difference. It's difference that we can see, which is typically the type of difference that we're talking about, or that we at least think about when we hear the word diversity. But diversity also incorporates difference that we can't see. So that invisible difference of experience, of background, of you can see me and you see that I am a Black woman. You see that I today am rocking my curly natural hair. You see that I have on a yellow jacket. But what you may not know is that I have a political science and communications degree, that I have studied diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that I've been skydiving, right? So those will be those invisible differences that are a part of my experience that make up my identity, that make me who I am, that you may not be aware of. So again, diversity just means different. Inclusion, right? So if we were thinking about these three words as a journey, I would tell us, and again, here's where this makes it a little bit uncomfortable, right? But it's time that we move beyond diversity, right? Diversity is a fact. You have it. You may not have as much of it. You may not have as many of the dimensions of diversity that you would like in terms of the visible aspects of diversity, which is oftentimes the challenge in the workplace. But diversity is a fact, right? Inclusion, though, is the act. Inclusion is where you are intentional around how do you incorporate that difference to where, regardless of people's visible and invisible difference, they believe they belong in the space, because we've cultivated a culture that's such that this happens, and not naturally, but intentionally. Right. And then the last word here is equity. So equity is when you have outcomes that aren't determined by the difference that you see. So here are the three questions that these definitions would ask. Diversity asks, who's in the room? Who's in the room? If everyone's cameras were on right now, I guarantee you we would see diversity, right? Again, think of diversity as a speed bump on this journey towards, and I say speed bump not to minimize the importance, but to help you perhaps reframe in your mind the priority. The priority is that we move to inclusion within our workspaces, within our communities, right? So inclusion asks the question, was everyone in the room heard? Did we hear from everyone that's in the room? And oftentimes this question hinges upon who's in leadership and what is the representation of that diversity at that top level where those decisions are being made. And then equity asks the question, this is the deep question again. This may be where your temperature starts to rise a little bit, but equity asks the questions, what are the conditions that we've created such that we hear the same voices in the room, right? Where certain groups are elevated more than others, where we hire certain groups more than we hire others, where certain groups are promoted more than others. What are the conditions that we have created, right? This is about intentional action that cause that to be the case. So here's an animation that you may or may have not seen, but I think this is important as we wrap up here. Knowing the difference between equality and equity, they are not the same thing, right? So equality oftentimes people would talk about equates with fairness, means that you distribute resources the same. Everyone gets the same thing, right? But as we know, and we often say, hey, people are different, thus their needs are different. So equity says that you are distributing resources such that the outcome, in the case of this particular illustration, the outcome is that everyone can see over the fence and see the game, right? So we said equity is when you have outcomes that aren't created by the difference, in this case, the height of the gentlemen that are trying to see the game, which is the outcome, which means purple shirt needs 2 boxes, red shirt needs 1 box, blue shirt doesn't need a box because the outcome is the same. All right. So the part that we're skipping today is about the value of DEI. What is the business case? And I had to just drop this in here from the CEO of Microsoft, that the business case for diversity is as clear and as straightforward as it has ever been. It's time to act. So if you're not familiar with the business case, again, I always like to give grace in that space because perhaps this topic is new to you and you can definitely check out the full training on this. But the real question is, how do we implement? So this is the last question, and then we're going to kick it off over to our panelists to ask some questions on this topic. So 4 critical success factors. If you are joining us right now and you're thinking, hey, we've been talking about this at our organization, we want to do something, we don't know where to start. Here's the first thing that you have to have. You have to have involvement and investment from the top. Your CEO, your president, your executive director, whoever is in that top seat at your company has to be not only involved, but invested in the work financially, as well as energy-wise, right? Both of those things have to come together. Second, diversity and inclusion can't be an aside, nice thing to do, flavor of the month. It must be integrated into the business strategy. And I'm referencing here best practices based on a plethora of data. Again, make sure you, if you're interested, check out the full training if you want to dive into the details. But the second thing is that you want to have a connected DEI strategy to the growth strategy of your company, so that this idea of an inclusive culture is a way of life at your organization. Third thing, people don't wake up like this. I wish they did. I wish we did, but that's not the case. So how do you integrate a learning and development strategy that is just as critical as every other aspect of your business to ensure that all of your leaders and all of your teams are aware of the strategic objectives and they're accountable to them as it relates to DEI? And then last but not least, and I would say this is one of the really important ones as you get moving and growing, but how do you align your external stakeholders and your external partners with your values related to DEI and with your strategy as it relates to communication, supplier diversity, et cetera. So these are 4 best practices that we've seen modeled across organizations who've got this work right. When you ask any DEI practitioner who is, an organization that stands out at the top of this work, Sodexo is always a name that comes up. They've been doing this work since the early 2000s, 2002, they rolled out a learning and development strategy that spanned across 6 years. And so this work isn't new. And I think, I hope that you find some sense of comfort in that, because there are blueprints, there are models. But I would say this, if you're looking to get started, here's where you start. You don't start with what you think, you start with the data. You understand the data at your company to develop a data-driven diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. So how is your culture? Are you doing the surveys? Do you have the demographic data? If you don't, how are you collecting it? We definitely have some templates to help you do that. Taking a look at your recruitment strategy. What does performance and promotion look like at your company? And then are you taking a look at attrition across your organization to note the implications of diversity on folks that are leaving? And I'll share lastly here this quote from Olivia McAvoy at Ernst & Young. She says, just as we don't guess the figures on a P&L or balance sheet, we can't play the guessing game when it comes to DEI data analytics. And I could not agree more. So if you're looking to get started, one, seek to understand, listen to your organization, do the data collection so you know what's going on, track your baseline. Where are you today? Have a good sense of that. Then align your partners. Right? Who is going to be a part of doing this work? Again, you may not be at a large organization that has a salaried individual like a chief diversity officer. So who is a part of that team? And then once you set a vision on that team, how do you repeat it so that everyone at the organization knows that this is a priority? And how are you transparent in the communications as you're collecting the data and as you're shifting the culture, which we all know takes time. So again, there's some great examples of this. Google has a public annual diversity report that you can check out. If you're not there yet, Excel does just fine. And so we again share some resources that will help you track your baseline. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We would love to support you at Career Thrivers, whether it's helping you with your strategy or learning development or coaching to help get your leaders there. So feel free to reach out, stay connected. Here's all of my contact information. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and let's open it up to our panelists. And I see some questions have already come in. And so I'm going to kick it off again and I'll leave this open here, to any of our panelists. So as you all are thinking about your field of work and being an expert in your field, what are some ways perhaps that empty words have been shown lately? And we bring up this question because, of course, we're in 2020. And I think we're at a point in the year where you can just say that and people not in agreement with what that means in terms of just all of the challenges of this year. But there's also, at the same time, been a lot of concern around perhaps performative solutions that aren't sustainable. So I want to open it up to the panel. Have you all experienced that in your work? And maybe what are your thoughts around that?
I did. Can y'all hear me? Okay. I did a few of the empty words would be, everybody had that time where they did the black box and it just said nothing. What I did on my social media was I put information there because I was like, I understood what everybody was trying to do and show their support, but I was like, there's no action after this. And then, the next day it went back to people just posting pictures of their vacation or a new outfit. So I was like, this is really empty. And then of course you don't see it. You don't see that support at the workplace, on the board of directors or anything. That was how I first got into it, where I was just like, that's it. Like, we're not doing anything from it, but that's how I saw it.
And I'll jump in as a publicist. Words and actions are my thing. And I think that we all saw it, very heavily doing the George Floyd thing here. And one of the things I know is when everyone was just putting, a simple stand that just said, I stand with you. And, for their audience was like, well, what exactly does that mean? And I think what was so important about understanding empty words is because we've heard these before, but this time around the audience was demanding a little bit more. And the reason why is I love leading with this question is because there's a reason that we're here, because something you said when you were presenting is just like the flavor of the month. We've talked about diversity so much. What does those empty words actually mean? We heard our friends talk about how their companies were sending emails to say, we're here for you. And it's like, what does that mean that you're here for me? What's the next step? Because as things are going on in our community, we still have to tune in with you. So I think it's just being mindful of that. Empty words are harmful, to the people that you serve, to the people that are within your company. So those, I stand with you, Black Lives Matter, and that was just it, and it really showed on social media. I know Melissa probably definitely talk about that from like an influencer standpoint, working with brands. What does that mean, especially with brands who demand so much from people of color, and then at that time it looks like they gave so little. So that's all I have to say on empty words.
Hold on. Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, so yeah, thanks for throwing it to me. For the influencer standpoint, that was a big deal because we're very visually based. So of course it was the black square and maybe a couple videos here and there, but I challenged a lot of my followers and then a lot of the companies I work with to give us an action statement and follow up with that. Come back in another month, discuss how it may have been challenging, and be okay with hearing the hard responses of how challenging is it if you can just look at a hashtag that says Black bloggers and you have 1 million that you can choose from. It's challenging someone to utilize their skill set to find what they need. We operate in this space and then tend to act like I don't understand how I can find what I need, when we have all been taught how to find what you need whenever you need it. So I often come back at least still once a month and I'm like, hey, have you stopped following those Black people? Have you stopped following those LGBTQ people? Have you, left comments? Have you really engaged with those that you say are different from you? And that makes people feel uncomfortable, but that's just where we're at right now. So.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think the empty words, like you guys were kind of saying, like the flavor of the month, and just as a content creator, as a marketer, as a consumer, it was kind of like, okay, cool, they're saying something, so you want to feel away. And then companies like Ben and Jerry's come out with these very clear, very specific, very detailed and actionable, drawing a line in the sand. And I think that really changed the scape of people who were like, well, they said something, so, they are with us, they're there. And it's like, oh no, but this is something. And I think for me, I freelance, but I also work for a company, and we had to sit down and have a conversation of like, hey, look, I'm not going to be your speaker for the Black people, but please understand that there's a difference in making a statement for statement's sake and then making a statement that actually means something. It's going to ruffle some feathers, but it is important at this time that you actually say something that means something and that people can hold on to. Because a lot of people, as Melissa was saying, like a lot of these brands and stuff are doing something neutral in general just to kind of like, get out of the way and not be someone who is on the we're taking the opposite stance side. But when you decide not to make a serious statement, I feel like you are on the, oh, I really don't care side anyway.
Yeah, definitely great insights there. And, I would agree in terms of just what is the intention behind the statements that are being made, and then what are the actions and the follow-up that correspond with that. So kind of along that same line, would love to ask you all, what are some of the ways that you believe, non-people of color should be addressing those statements or taking action to really communicate their standpoint surrounding social justice topics?
So in your presentation, you had this piece about allies. I was recently listening to an episode of Politically Reactive, and they had one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement on there. And something she said really, really stuck out to me. And I've kind of been now adapting this into the way I interact with non-people of color. And she says, I don't like allies, I need accomplices. And that for me was really, really powerful. A lot of people, when things were going on with the beginning of the protests and stuff like that, were reaching out and were like, well, what can I do? How can I help? What should I do in these situations? And it's like, have you seen the videos of the white people who get in line and stand in front of these people who are being harassed and beaten and that kind of thing? It's like, you can't be in this with me from the sidelines and just say, dang girl, I feel you. Or be in the company meeting and something microaggression happens, and then after it's over, you send me a message like, "Ooh, I feel you. I've seen this before. I've said this before. I've seen." It's like, what happened in that moment? Why weren't you speaking up in the meeting? Why weren't you beside me when this stuff happens? I need you riding with me off top and all the way through, not after it's all done and behind the closed doors, or like sending your money to these little places. it's stepping up and like not just talking about it, but it's being about it and being about it all the time, in person, on social media, in your emails, at Thanksgiving with your grandma, like really dedicating some time to this, because we have to do that.
Love that. Love that. And if I may, I would love to share. There's a quote on allyship that I absolutely love from Roxane Gay. She did an article in Marie Claire on making Black Lives Matter, and here's what she had to say about it. She says, Black people don't need allies. We need people to stand up and take on the problems born of oppression as their own without remove or distance. We need people to do this even if they cannot fully understand what it's like to be oppressed for their race or ethnicity, gender, sexuality, ability, class, religion, or other marker of identity. We need people to use common sense to figure out how to participate in social justice. And I think that you know, for us, that means that you're coming to the table and you're doing the work to be, you know, a part of the solution, you know, versus a mouthpiece around what needs to be changed. Any other thoughts there, you know, or advice that you all would share with non-people of color?
I think too, if you're in the office place, a big thing that I didn't get to see was calling a meeting, and instead of like a town hall, and asking specifically the Black people, how can we be of service to you? How can we make you more comfortable in the office space, especially after the George Floyd murder? Like, that was traumatizing. And to act like it kind of didn't happen at work, and have to, in my field, I had to write about, you know, keep those updates. And I had extra therapy that week, I'm not gonna lie, because there was nobody at work to talk to about it. And then they did finally send out an email maybe 3 weeks after, just saying, here are some resources, but the resources were kind of hard to find. And I feel like there should have been a meeting to make it easier. There's a meeting about everything else, but I felt like this was really important, and to show real empathy and sympathy, and just to be there and say, hey, how can we, like, not even help you, but be of service, because this is a problem. And instead of just you know, just saying we support you, how? Show me, instead of just saying it. So calling a meeting would be my answer to that.
And another thing I like to add, another thing I like to add, like she said, calling a meeting. My primary background is nonprofit. So, you know, that's a space where people feel enabled and entitled to be like, I'm helping the people. And usually the people you're helping is, you're a white person helping people of color. But then when you have Black people working in that same space and on the same level as you, you feel offended when someone calls you to the carpet and says, well, you're treating the client a certain way, but what about the people who you see at the water fountain every single day? And I've been in those town hall meetings where the people of color are like, hey, these are some microaggressions that we really would love for you to just not do. And tears of like, you're attacking me. I feel, you know, this is not intentional, and things of that nature. Well, that's why it's a microaggression. It's not intentional. So we're trying to let you know. So all that to say is, be okay with the uncomfortable feeling of not knowing. Be okay with that, because we all, no matter your color, your gender, your skin type, you walk into places where you just don't know. And so you need to be open to say, what is the thing that you all do here that I'm not doing correctly, or that I'm taking for granted, or that I am brushing off and saying that's not important? Because that's a really important question to ask, whichever space you choose to walk into.
I love that, Melissa. And I mean, that's how we do every other sector of business, you know. And I think one of the things that I try to do in this work is to help people understand that, one, may be uncomfortable for you, but this work isn't hard. It's not hard. If we can solve for artificial intelligence and, you know, technology and all of the things that we figured out, I think we apply those same skills, that same, oftentimes I like to compare it to sales and marketing. Like, you do the research, you ask the consumer what they think. you ask the people at the organization what they think, to Melissa's point. Like you model these same practices that you do in every other area of life. It's because of the discomfort that is directly linked, to the history and the historical sin of this country, that makes the work feel uncomfortable and feel hard, because we don't like to sit in that space. But when we change our perspective around that, I think we can apply a lot of the same skills that we do to other areas. Lakeithia, did you have something to add on this before we moved on to the next question?
Yeah, just really quickly, as a publicist, and I know the different PR people will have a different perspective. I'm more of an honest and direct person. So when we go back to thinking about even the empty words or just those messages of like, say the words, put Black in there. Don't just try to group it all together. Who are you exactly talking to? But another thing is, I know somebody in the comments asked about, knowing how if you're doing it the right way. I'm an honesty type person. If you know that your organization and business have no diversity, you haven't taken action, be honest, admit it, put that statement out there. I love Just Love, the owner, when he posted his statement about, look, I've been just sitting back. I even got kids that I adopted from Africa, and I thought I was doing exactly what, anybody else was doing, but I realized that I was doing something wrong. He put that statement out there, and I mean, the comments, of course you had a couple comments, and you're going to get it. You're going to get those comments and say, I'm boycotting. I'm not coming back. That's fine. You don't want those people anyway. But, it was that honesty that we needed of being like, you know what? I thought I was doing fine. I gave a little money to this. I supported this, and I thought that I was, keeping things diverse, and it wasn't what we needed. And he corrected it. He corrected it publicly because it is shown publicly. So as a publicist, I'm like, put it out there. I know some people don't like to, they like to hide behind it, but be honest, and be honest if you are in that place of like, you know what, we haven't done anything. And I always ask people too, it's like, a lot of people's like, oh, Black Lives Matter, I'm going to go and donate to this whole big thing. And it's like, what have you done locally? What have you done locally for your minority community? And that's what we should already be starting at. So that's, yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to direct this next question to Melissa, and then I'll direct our last one to Tatiana and Tiff. So Melissa, for you, so as we think about, you reference your experience with nonprofits, and I'm so glad that you shared that. I think, we have to kind of reframe in our mind the differences between intent and impact. You can have great intentions, but if the words land wrong, the impact is negative. So perhaps an apology is needed. But when we're thinking about representation, what do you think that it means for a company to, increase people of color representation in leadership? I think those are words that we're seeing a lot nowadays. What does that mean for you? And what are your thoughts on that?
The first thing we have to remember as executives and people who are looking for a more diverse staff is Black people are not a monolith. Latinx people are not a monolith. All these people are not a monolith. So to say, we need a Black person, and then you hire one to represent all of the Black experience, and you kind of trump that thing on top of someone, or you put that on top of someone, you're going to get an outcome that you did not expect, because that outcome is going to be stress. It's going to be someone who feels overextended. It's going to be someone who is bringing the weight of their culture and try to do their work, the actual job that you hired them for. It's going to be so much harder for them. Whereas you're just like, well, we hire our Black person, our gay person, and our Latina person, and that is what we needed. And it goes back to listening. It goes back to asking real questions during the hiring process, because you have a need for your company. So it may be like, at this company, we need outreach. The outreach needs to reach the Black community, but not just the Black community, the college community. Do you have that experience? So that will separate a lot of people out of your campaign or something of that nature, but you're going to get the right person to come to your organization, bring that diversity and that culture that you need, and then start to ask that person, who else do you know that we could work with in the community that can reach this target demographic that we're working with. So like Brittany said, you need to research your organization first. What do you actually need? You don't just need a Black person so that when I look up your board of directors, I see that Black face or I see that Latina face. I need to know what your goal is for your organization. And if me, this particular person of color, has the skill set, experience, cultural background to connect with it. And like I said, working in nonprofit, I started a nonprofit at 16 years old. My family runs a lot of nonprofit organizations up north. But my aunt specifically, who worked for United Way, was very intentional about talking to employees and saying, what can you bring to the table from your culture, from your experience, from your education? And that is the perfect candidate. That's where we start talking about the inclusion factor and getting away from the diversity factor. We just have that one guy. And I had that even when I taught in Metro Public Schools. We had one Black male teacher, but he wasn't the Black male that you thought. He wasn't going to give you this higher learning experience. He was just like, oh, I come from this place and I am probably more synced up with these students than I am with these students. So why do you keep sending me these students when I can't identify with them? And so that person, the principal, was like, wow, we probably need more. And we're all sitting there like, yes, you need like a lot more Black male teachers with different backgrounds. You need to talk to them and see where they fit in. So those are the conversations I like people to have, whether you're doing executive, whether it's blogger strategy, influencer strategy, like really do your research. And here's the thing, it don't take that long. It really doesn't. It really doesn't take that long. You don't have to do an exhaustive 8-hour search. It's like a 20-minute search. And you figure out, yeah, this is the person we need to hire for this particular project.
Absolutely. It reminds me of something, Melissa, that we share often, and it's that we talked about those definitions. And thank you all for putting the definitions in the chat. I loved reading those. But when you have diversity without inclusion, you end up with tokenism. You end up with, oh, we've checked that box. And if you go ask that person how they feel about their work experience, particularly if they had a blinded opportunity to tell you, they'd probably tell you that they don't believe that they belong in the space. So it's so important that we move beyond diversity and we get to the core of what matters, and that's cultivating an inclusive culture. All right, last question here as we transition into our deeper dive into marketing and communications. Tatiana and Tiffany, I want to throw this over to you. So according to Nielsen data, African Americans are more likely to say that they enjoy seeing people in the media and content that share their ethnic background, right? So seeing is believing. So as we are talking about kind of general marketing approaches, what are some ways that leaders at organizations can be more intentional with their marketing strategy to be more inclusive?
Let's see. I would definitely say recruiting. It starts with recruiting. There's several HBCUs in the United States, like if we're just talking about home, that they can actually recruit from that are specialized in those different industries that they can go straight to. Like there's, like Melissa's saying, it takes 20 minutes. Like we're in Tennessee and there's like Brittany said, it's 4. So it's kind of like, what are you doing? But definitely starts at the recruiting level. Even helping with programs before we get to college, like in high school, and getting those training programs. They have, Black Girls Code. I think that's really cool, especially with tech growing. And Nashville is slowly becoming, well, not slowly, fast becoming like a small Silicon Valley here. We have more than 5 tech companies that they can start. And just to go off of that too, I was reading a lot of the stats. And a lot of these tech companies only have, I'm going to speak to my Black people. They're all in customer service. There's no higher ups. There's no management that are Black or people of color. And then when it is just people of color, it's Asian and Indian. And then it'll be women as they count as their diversity as well. But I was reading some stats on a company. Warby Parker was just out with it, and they said it was 4% of management that was of Black people, and on their board it was 0%. But they're doing actionable plans and put out their goals. They put it out for everybody. I would tell everybody to go look at that just type in Warby Parker, diversity inclusion, and they literally have their goals and their actionable steps that they're going to get. A lot of it's not until 2024, but a day at a time. I really do applaud them for that. But again, it's kind of like you can't applaud too much because it's something that you should be doing anyway, and we shouldn't have to wait till somebody gets murdered in the street for things like this to happen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It has to be, we have to have the opportunities to be in the room. When I was going over these questions, this one made me think of an episode of Blackish. And if you're not watching Blackish, besides being just funny, they have these really tough conversations in ways that are digestible. And there's an episode about an advertising campaign for packaging, and the one brought to you by the board is all white people. And then Andre brings up his, and it's Black people. But one of the other associates mentioned, oh, hey, yeah, all light skin, curly hair, straight hair, looking a certain way. So I think without having people of color, whether they're Black or not, in a room, you can't go through and break these things down and kind of go through them with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that you truly are being inclusive. You truly are trying to be diverse. You truly are trying to reach people. A lot of people will throw, you know, kind of like what Todd was just saying, like one in, and it's like, cool. Everybody here is white. Sandy might have blonde hair, and Tammy has brown hair, but it's a Black girl over there. We checked off Black, we checked off woman, we did all that, and now she's supposed to speak to the entire Black experience. And then in your campaigns, you can throw one Black person in, or one Asian person, one Latino person in, and it's like, cool, we did it. And if someone was in that room, they'd be able to help you break down a little more, like, you check the box, and we're not a box. Inclusion is not a box. It is an actionable effort to truly make sure people are represented and actually heard and seen.
Absolutely. And I loved, Andy had a question before we transition here to the marketing and comms conversation. Let's see if I can find it. So I thought Andy had a really great question here in terms of, you know, what does this look like? Does it only sit within HR, or, you know, who's responsible for this work? And so there's a great reference to Deloitte and what they call their maturity model, and how organizations move from a mandate of diversity and inclusion, which is where a lot of companies are right now. You know, we saw a Black man be murdered in the streets in broad daylight, and it sparked a lot of companies to take action, to speak up, one, but then to put some real action behind their intention and to start to do something. That is still in that mandate zone. It's very much tied to HR. You may have a DEI team or committee, but to really get to a movement, you have to have an integrated strategy that starts with your business leaders. So it starts with people who have direct reports, just to ensure I'm being really clear, regardless of what they look like. They're aligned to the strategy. They are committed to the vision of the CEO or the executive director or the leader that says this is important, it's a priority, and it's aligned to our business growth plan. It's not off to the side, it's connected. And then the entire organization becomes a part of the plan. So again, make sure you check out the link to the resource to dive in more around the nuts and bolts to the work. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Lakithia to take us into our second portion around marketing and communications.
All right. Thank you, Brittany. That was really great. Thank you, everyone. So I am just going to kick us off with a reading as we go into questions and answers with our panelists. And as a publicist, I've been a publicist for over 10 years. And I say 10 years, but I feel like longer because me and Tatiana started together. She created a magazine and radio show at MTSU. And we were doing PR before we even knew that it was PR. And so as I was thinking about this, and I was, you know, as a publicist, you're doing your research, you're gathering the data. And something just really hit me, and something I read a month ago, and I went back to it because I realized the data's there, right? The data that we need, the data that companies are using is there, is free online. The data's been there for years. And I'm like, well, The data's there, but the changes haven't. We've been talking about diversity for over 30 years, but something transitioned this time. But before I talk about what happened in this transition, I want to read something that really stood out to me by Deidre from Society Redefined Consulting. And she says, there is an ongoing conversation in advertising, marketing, and communications industry regarding the lack of diversity, inclusion, and equity. African Americans represent approximately 5% of the workforce, and less than 100 Black women are in leadership, the C-suite, or in positions of influence in the industry. Hispanics and Latino have slightly increased over time, making up 10%, and Asian Americans are at 8.5%. Yet, white professionals are at 85% in the 629,000 person industry. Inequality is nothing new. Diversity and inclusion has been a hot topic in the advertising industry for over 30 years, and yet many opportunities remain on the table and still yet to be tapped. So she also asked in her reading was like, why aren't we following the money? So I know if you are someone who's putting together a communications plan, any type of marketing plan, you've seen that last year in 2019, 1.3 trillion was the annual buy just from the African American community. That's not for just the whole, people of color, but that's just from the African American community. So she said, so why aren't we following the money? If people of color are not hired at general market agencies and multicultural agencies are diminishing or strategically prevented from participating, then who's at the table? Who's selecting talent for content, championing diverse media partners, providing direction on hair and makeup, who's writing the copy, who's telling our stories and representing the voice and full range of the Black and brown diaspora? Culture is not a spectator sport. Brands cannot participate through social media, listen to rap music, and claim to be a specialist. Marketers must hire those who reflect the new consumer, who have a share of voice, different perspectives, and create work that resonates among a spectrum of audience. And something that stood out to me when she said the new consumer, and as a publicist, years ago, it used to be where brands, we got our information about brands and the owners, the designers, from the media, from journalists, from your publicists, but now with social media, your audience, your consumers now have direct connection with you, right? So that has really changed. And when I was looking at the data, I was like, well, we haven't been following the money. We see the buying power of the minority community, but for some reason, we still have not made any changes. We haven't brought in anything about diversity. We haven't even moved from talking about diversity and then going into equity and inclusion. We're still at diversity. So the data is not what's mattering. I'm just gonna be honest here. Y'all don't care about the data. That's just be honest. You should care about the data. The data should be what's driving this. But I see, when people say, well, what happened in 2020 that now this conversation is so hot? Because we've seen this before. We've seen civil unrest. We've seen protests. We've seen all of this before. And I think I would say it was Trayvon Martin is when we started to see the impact of social media and the power that he has. And then over time, it just kept going and going. And I think the difference this time was that your audience realized that they could make a difference directly from the palm of their hands. They could call you out from the palm of their hands. They can make you speak up from the palm of their hands while they're sitting on their couch and while they're watching the same videos. And that is why we're here right now. We're not here because of data. We're not here because you want to talk about diversity again. We're here because you posted a statement and your audience said, no. You can't be standing with Black Lives Matter because when I came into your store, you had a nickname for me so that your employees can walk around. Your employees that has worked with you were saying, wait, I've been with this company for 5 years and I've yet to move up. As a person of color, you haven't even reached across the table. So that's where we get into the conversation of building new tables. And that's why we're here. Like I'm not gonna say we're here because of data. I'm not gonna say we're here because we want to talk about diversity. We don't want to talk about it again. But what you do want to talk about is that your audience is holding you accountable. And I think that is the most important conversation when we're thinking about that. And also, as we get into solutions here in this talk, I want to remind you that this isn't a solution to make you feel good. right? This is a solution. Before you even start with the things that our panelist is going to talk about today, I hope that you took some really great notes with, Brittany's section, and know that it starts from the top up. And one of the things I will highlight before I go into the questions is that I was reading on social media where Zimmerman is a brand that's really popular, and they were, they posted their statement about like not remaining neutral and staying with Black Lives Matter. And people who worked with them was like, wait a minute, can we, like, they posted the pictures of the handbook, the employee handbook for people that work in a store, and all of it was just of white women. I couldn't work there. None of us can work there right now. And also, not only that, but then it's like one of the employees came and said, well, I sat in a board meeting, and one of the employees at the executive level came and got some dust up and came and said, oh, look, this looks like your hair. So these conversations, these things that you think you're going to use to put out to get into diversity, it's going to start from inside, and it's going to start internally. So I hope you took some notes there, but let's dive on in. Let's pull up my questions here so that we can talk. And I actually want to start with Tiffany, because Tiffany, you created, what you created for Black women is amazing. So I want to say, in your field, you've created networking and exposure opportunities for people of color in the creative industry. What are some actions you think that brands should be taking when it comes to supporting and collaborating with people of color?
So there's quite a few, and I think the first thing, like we've been talking about, is looking internally at your staff for sure, and then what you're putting out. So I do Black Women in Creative Spaces. It's a conference or just a summit for Black women who create things, entrepreneurs. I've been to so many business networking things, and it's full of white men. And then you go to stuff that's a women's networking business, whatever, and it's full of white women, and that's fine. However, sometimes your experience doesn't speak to mine. What I'm looking to gain and kind of what I'm going through in my business journey is not the same as yours. So that was important. But I think also looking at content. So I'm a blogger like Melissa. I also work with clients on influencer marketing and stuff like that. And I've had to tell brands, I'm not going to work with you. I scrolled your Instagram and it took me 25 lines before I found a person of color. You don't represent me. I'm not going to be your token. I'm not going to be, if it's not important to you to at least 25 lines, like that is so much. Someone is doing your social, someone is going through your campaigns. Like there needs to be more hands on things, more checks on things, more filtering of content and messaging. I know we can say, filtering into this specific messaging stage. People are being specific. They're being intentional. You know who you're talking to. You know who you think is your audience, who's paying you the most money. Seeing 45 white women before I get to anyone who's darker than camel is ridiculous. And someone that's passed through so many different people. And I think companies aren't being intentional about that. And so now when we're getting into this space of now everyone's diversity and inclusion, you have to be able to sit with that and understand that we are creators. We've been doing stuff for a while. We've been working on stuff, and we've been asking you to include us, to invite us, to do, and you know what? We're tired. So we're not going to keep asking for a seat at your table. We're going to build our own. And now you have to come, humble yourself a little bit and say, you know what? We did mess up. We haven't been including. We don't have the people inside. How can we learn more and be willing to pay for that? There's not too many more of us now who are going to kind of sit and be like, oh yeah, girl, I'll help you. I'll do whatever. We're not trying to be your diversity and inclusion person at your job now that you think you need one, because then again, I become the Black voice at your company. And that's still not doing it right. So I do think it's important to look internally, look at the messaging you've been putting out, and not just right now. I mean, go back 6 months, go back a year, and get a full view of who you've been talking to and why you've been talking to them. And then now you have to think about how you're going to change your messaging to fit this new group of people that you want to be involved with. And I think it's also sitting in stuff like this. I mean, we're admittedly not the most diverse group. We're about all the same age, all Black women, all in a certain industry. But after you listen to this and are in this conversation, go out and find another one that's another group of people. You have to do listening, do your read, just like you want to know where to spend your money. Learn how these people are interacting. What do they want? What are they talking about? You're going to have to go out and actively seek these different places. Heck, come to Black Women in Creative Spaces. February 27th, we'll be there and talk to creatives, shake their hand. You're going to have to get out of your box because a lot of us are not trying to come to you anymore. We've been there, we've been doing it, and we're tired.
Tiffany, you made a good point about, them coming to your event, because I think we've always gone out of our way to show up to their events and being, one of the only Black people in there, trying to wait for somebody to speak to you, or you speaking to someone and, they're just like, hi, and everyone's all, in their space. But then you also come, I've seen it where people was like, oh, look who we have here. They're just kind of showing you off like you're a new little puppy because a person of color is in here. And I think it's, when people say, and it goes back to the whole HBCU thing. So like when people say, oh, I just don't know anyone to bring in. I don't know anyone. It's like, you're not going to the places that need to go to. I was going to say lazy, but just professionally, you're not reaching out. You're trying to go to your same spaces, waiting for us to show up in a place that we're not comfortable at. And, I also am thinking about this in a sense of we're in Nashville, right? Let's just take it from a Nashville perspective. I've gone to events and talks with a lot of big agencies. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know we had so many different type of marketing agencies here. And, this is just for the panel, for anyone who have some thoughts on this, but how can these bigger agencies work with smaller agencies like us, like people of color that own our smaller agencies? How can they work with us, and collaborate? But also, how are they missing the mark right now? That's what I want to know. Like, how are they missing the mark? Because right now we're not connecting at all. You walk in those rooms, we've been in this industry for over 10, 15 years for a lot of us. And they're like, oh, who are you? What do you do? And, so how are they missing the mark, and what are some ways they can do to work with us?
That's for me, right?
Oh, sorry.
Is it who?
No, go ahead, Tatiana.
Oh, I was definitely going to say there's so many organizations. Just on Facebook alone, you can literally go to the T and type the word in and go by neighborhood, go by subject, go by topic. Because if you can do this and buy Facebook ads, you can do it with groups. And that's the cool thing about it. There's another app now called Clubhouse where they talk all day about different topics. I love it. And then I think a lot of them are missing the mark when they just do, I'm going to be blunt, half-ass promotion of things, like last minute promotion of something, like not putting people on flyers, like not even making it clear. There's way to do press, like even with our event now, like just being honest, like I feel like there should have been more press about this because it's a very important conversation. And we literally have 5 experts on the subject of being a person of color, being a Black woman in a certain industry. We're all in different industries where we can give you different point of view. And this is like information that's needed that will help tons of companies. Like just now, just the presentation, Brittany, that you gave was just gems. Just as a Black woman, like seeing that and seeing it directly like on paper is like, wow. Like it's just certain things you can do, and we can also always learn from each other. But I think they miss the mark when it's like when it just seems like, oh, well, we're doing this, here's something for you. Like we have a platform here, but then there's nothing after. And I think we need to create talking after that and still connect. So I hope everybody that's listening here, takes our information and contacts us. Like, we're not going to represent every Black woman, every person of color, but there are questions we can answer. But just don't look to your diversity or anybody that's diverse in your company as your answer to everything. Because honestly, a lot of us are tired. We're not the teacher. And there are people like Brittany that are actually here to are paid to do diversity inclusion. That's why it's a job now, because it's important and it's paid. It's something that's valued and needs to be paid for. So, yeah.
And Tatiana, I love it. Oh, go ahead, Tiff.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I know, just 2 seconds caveat. I know we're saying that we're tired and we're over it. We are for sure, but I do think it's important to say that we are open to conversation. I think a lot of people are not trying to reach out because they think that they're going to be met with anger and upset and frustration. It's no. These companies can come and talk to us, can act, and not just us, but there are plenty of Black experts in so many things. Seek them out and ask genuinely. We're tired, but also we realize the conversations do need to be had. So we do want to talk to you.
And I did want to share a very authentic encounter I had just last week from a person who I used to work with at another organization. And she said, hi, Melissa, how are you? I have a position available. We have only seen this many Black people. We have got to bring in more Black people for this particular position because of where it's located, number one, and because of what we're trying to do according to our goals. So just to say that, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. You're not saying do you know where the Blacks are? No, it was literally here's our goals. This is these are things that we really need. And she said the person I thought of asking was you, not because you know about this, this arena, but I know you are a connector. Who can you connect me with that will get more people into this arena? And it was an engineering type of thing. So of course I'm not an engineer, but I do know a bunch of Black engineers. So here are 4 people that you now have a little job to go and talk to. So the way she came was authentic. She told me what her goals are. She told me what they had done on their own, which wasn't a lot. Like Tatiana said, you posted a position in hopes that we would come, and we've never been welcome to that type of organization ever. And then she said, well, let me do take a little bit more steps. That right there is authentic. It's just letting people know that you need to do it a little bit better and do some more work. That doesn't make us tired. That makes us go, great. But the other stuff is just when you give us the thing and say, can you find the 20 people? That makes us tired.
So good. And I'm just going to add really quickly on to what Tatiana said. I almost jumped up out of my chair. But the thing about strategic partnerships, the question that we all have to ask, particularly if you're in an organization and you look around and you're like, a lot of us look the same. The question is, who is at the table, right? This conversation is about creating new tables, but you must ask the question, who's at the table? And I know for sure, even this year, even with room for improvement, that was a question that Nashville Design Week looked at. It's hey, when you go to the Teams tab on your website, you want to talk about D&I? Everyone looks the same, and they were very open to saying, yep, Brittany, come on board. What do we need to think about? And just really open to ideas. And I think, you see the difference. Perhaps you don't see it in the marketing and the content, but I know every event that I've clicked on, I have visibly seen the difference in the programming from the last several years that we've been apart. And so I think that becomes so important that you're not just saying, hey, we're looking to be more diverse and we're hoping it happens. What is back to the definition of inclusion, the intentional action that you are taking to go out and seek, to go out to invest in, to go out and say, hey, I see you're doing this work. We want to partner with you, to be really intentional in your effort to include the difference that you say you want to see.
Thank you. That was some great tips. Melissa, I have a question for you. You run your social media digital agency, and you have been an influencer for over 10 years. But something people also don't know, but some people may know, is that you've done talent casting as well. So what would be the first step someone looking to diversify their brands and organizations representation? What would be their first steps if they're looking to create more diverse, social media campaigns, lookbooks, advertisement? Because when we see, I told a brand one time, I was like, I see the same billboard for a spa, but every time I see it, I just see a white woman. So what are some first steps that people can take to say, you know what, let's diversify, let's show something different within our advertisement?
So that's a really good question. I did work for a talent casting for a modeling agency that was very white. She came from Franklin. She modeled really early in the game. So she was a model at the time when there was like one Black model on the runway. So she had the intention in her head, like, I want to have a diverse modeling agency, but I do not know what to do, which is like, do you not know what to do? So the first thing she did was hire a Black person who had experience in the industry. So that would be number one, is this saying, I need help. It's not that I don't know what to do or I don't know what to say. I need help. I need help to do this. And I also need to just say, I need courage to hear the bad news. So, I was always very vocal and saying things, when she would cast people and say things about hair, things about body shape and stuff like that. And I would have to pull her to the side, after people are gone, because I never want to intimidate or bring fear to this subject, the person that we're trying to bring on, but say, Black women have a little bit more hips and butt. Black women yes, she's a size 2 and she can be considered curvy, but you don't have to say, have you considered losing weight? Things of that nature. So we had to have long conversations where there were tears about your tone, your intonation, and your intent. Because what are you looking for? Are you just looking for a brown version of a white girl? Or are you actually looking for a actual Black girl, an actual Latina girl, an actual whatever girl? And that was a very strong question for her. And even was a strong question for me when I run campaigns, because I'm like, okay, am I looking for this version of that? Or am I actually looking for the authentic, what we need for this person's campaign? As far as social media is concerned, like I said earlier, we have the tools. We have been taught 1,000 times how to search for terms, how to do SEO, how to do this, how to do that. And then you come to the table and say, we can't find any Black people or any people to do this spa campaign, and it's just like, have you looked at Black women luxury? Have you looked at this hashtag that has been created by tech companies to say, this is how we categorize things on the internet? You click the hashtag and voila, you should find, for the most part, 80% of the things you see on this hashtag should make sense with the hashtag. So when I hear people always say, I can't find for my campaign, that makes no sense. And like Tiffany said, you'll go to a social media page and scroll. If she scrolled 25 times, 25 rows times 3 is 75 photos that did not have a person of color in it, or the person you're looking for in it. So I always call people to task. As an influencer myself, and as someone who does influencer marketing, I have had to tell people, I cannot promote this to I love your brand, I love it, but I can't promote it to my audience because there are no Black people on your website and there are no Black people on your social media. And you get radio silence because no one's called them to the table to say that's not there. So are you saying Black people don't use your candles? They don't use that? But if I went to a traditional Black thing that Black people do, sneakers, we're just all up and through, so we can wear sneakers, but we can't use fancy candles. And you don't come to me with your price point, because you already know, if you did one smooth Google search, what the spending habits of Black people and African Americans are. So don't tell me that your price point is too high for that particular demographic. You just don't want to put Black people on your thing. So I would tell people, be intentional, make sure that you're okay with, hearing the answers that you're going to get, because no one's going to hold you through this process. We are all adults running organizations, making money. And so you can't say that I can't do this. This is too hard. And when I work with bloggers who are like, when the George Floyd everything happened and the Black Square and all this, I had an influx of emails like, help me be a better white person. And I was just like, come on, guys. So I wrote a post and I said, you know what to do. You just don't want to do it. You just want someone to stand in front of you and say, this is a good one and it's okay. No, we're done with that. Stand up for yourself. You stand up for yourself for so many other things, and be okay with losing, because what you're going to lose, you're going to gain so much more respect for coming out. Like Warby Parker said, we don't have enough. Coming out for like lots of companies saying we just don't have enough, and we just chose not to. And now we're choosing to do it, and we want to have more. And it's okay that you lose 100, 200, even as an influencer. Me even saying that, I lost maybe 150 followers in a day, but then I gained so many. And I still said another count. I said, of these that I gained, because a lot of my friends were gaining thousands upon thousands of new white followers, I said only 30% of those followers will stay. After about 2 months and seeing a lot of this Blackness on the timeline, I'm gonna unfollow very quietly in the middle of the night. No one's gonna know. You're gonna go look at your follower list and say, wow, a lot of those people I got back in June are no longer here. So be real with yourself as a person. What do you really want? If you just really want to surround yourself with the same type of people, that's your life. But if you're really sitting in this type of panel or the hundreds of other panels that will go on for the rest of the year, you need to say, I'm going to stick it through the hard part, because Black people do it all the time. We come to your events, we wait for you to speak to us. We sit in your interviews, we wait for you. We pull our hair back. We don't wear our braids that day. We put on our wig that day just so you can hire us. And you got to do the same thing as well. That's it.
Whew, Melissa, that was a whole lesson, girl. That was a whole lesson. And you know what? That really got me thinking, because we all receive so many emails. Like, how do I address this? What can you read over this statement for me? And it just really also made me think about like messaging and diverse language. And I really would love for Brittany to answer this, but I also would love for, all the panelists to answer this. I like to be realistic, right? We're talking about diversity. You have, brands putting out that they're going to make their executive boards and leadership, more diverse. But realistically, they can't just fire somebody, say, make room. We got to make room for people of color to come in. And, so it takes work. So for people who don't have that diversity right now, what are some things they can do about, language and messaging that also don't feel appropriated, because we've seen our culture and our words and all that stuff appropriated so much when people put the messaging out, or when they decide that like, oh, we're just going to post some pictures, but we're going to work on our caption. We're going to post a white girl, but our caption is going to be something that, Black people enjoy hearing. So what are some actions that they can take if they don't have someone on the board right now?
Yeah. So, I definitely go back to the conversation around, embracing discomfort. I think, if you're not familiar with the term white fragility, the references to tears and crying when being confronted are examples of that, where, you have people that may or may not know, and then you are awakened to the microaggression or the bias or even the discrimination or even the racism. And I know that is a word that has been stripped of its original meaning. There is no gray. I think we all, those of us who tuned in a week or so ago, heard a reference across the national media of being the least racist in the room. And there is no such thing. That in and of itself is a racist statement. There is no such thing as being the least racist. You are either anti-racist or you are racist. And so even that education in terms of anti-racism training and anti-racism education and understanding what that means and what it entails as it relates to perhaps a priority at your organization of improving racial and ethnic diversity, again, goes back to this critical success factor of learning and development. And, like Tiff said earlier, we created, that 5 essentials that I referenced because I was tired of telling people no. Like I'm not coming to your organization to spend time, sharing expertise and doing a training that is worth thousands of dollars. So it's just, you have to make the investment. And I would say for leaders, one, it requires you to be able to sit with being uncomfortable and knowing that that's a part of the work. Two, I would say it also involves being willing to make mistakes and being transparent when you do. Listen, I always say this, like, I'm not an expert at this. I don't believe anyone that does this work is an expert. We are all together in the process of learning as it relates to the industry of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Lakithia mentioned this, and she's absolutely right. This work, as in diversity, equity, and inclusion, the formal industry of the work that I choose to do today, started in the late 1960s. And I'm taking an intentional pause so that you can let that sink in. This work started in the late 1960s as a result of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII, EEOC, which we're probably all familiar with. If you work at an organization, made it illegal to discriminate on the basis of age, race, sex, etc., now sexual orientation and other aspects of identity. So this work isn't new, right? Also, I bring that up because this work was birthed out of politics. It was birthed out of legislation. So, really making the excuse, really, which is what it is, of we can't have this conversation because it's political or because it's uncomfortable or because it's hard. It's all of those things. Yes, and it's all of those things. And as leaders, if you're committed to the work, if you're committed to the change that you say you want to see, then I think it takes those two things that, hey, communicate. And I don't mean just the awareness of like, I need to be uncomfortable being uncomfortable, or I know I'm going to make mistakes. No, I mean the language of saying as a leader, listen, we recognize that we haven't done anything in this space until now. Like, I'm verbatim as a leader, right? We recognize that we haven't done much, but we see a need to make a change. And here's the change that we're wanting to make. And it's starting with us doing our part to learn. And we are going to invest in that learning. Here's what that looks like: strategy, tactics, plan. And then as a result of that, we're going to commit to shifting our culture. Here's what that looks like: strategy, tactics, plan, right? And then we're going to get to the recruiting that we need to be intentional about bringing in the diversity that we don't see: strategy, tactics, plan, the same way we do any other area of business. And so I think those are just some, again, overarching themes that as leaders, I think it's important that we embrace. It's not enough to say that we don't know. It's not enough to say that it's uncomfortable. It's all of those things. And if you say you're about the communication that you sent out, or the post that you made, or the statement that you shared, then that's what the work entails. And again, we would love to be a partner with you in helping to get there. If you're ready to invest and implement in a way that is really expansive across your organization and really meaningful to get to the impact that you want to see. So with that, Lakithia, I know we're getting close on time. I'll turn it back over to you. I know we have maybe a few moments for some Q&A.
Yes, so we do. Let's see. I know we kind of answered the questions as we went, but let's see if we have anything from the audience. We have a few moments. And if we answered everything, see if anyone has any questions. I will say, so one of the things we didn't do yet was the poll. I don't know if you guys had checked out the poll, but the question was, when you look at the leadership at your company, would you say it's diverse? And 79% of people said no, and 21% said yes. So I don't know about y'all, but I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked at all. And I know that, we have so much work to do. I know that companies and organizations have so much work to do. And I hope that, there was one person who had a question about, like, if you're not in a leadership role, how do you start speaking about it? And I know everyone have a different perspective, but I would personally say, speak up, speak up, let them know that you have to let your leaders know that you want to see diversity, and you expect to see diversity in the companies that you're going into. When you're interviewing with companies, you can also ask them, what type of diversity is there? What's there? Who's there for me to work with? How, if you don't have diversity, then how are you getting the job done to serve the different markets that you're marketing to? You're communicating with the communities that you're engaging with. How are you doing that if there isn't no diversity at the table? So that's my perspective. Brittany may, have something a little different, but Do we see any other questions from the audience?
I do have something to say about when you feel like you don't have any power at your company, but you want to bring in diversity, is one, find your friends on the higher level, because we know we need jobs. We want to get paid. We want to pay our bills. So no one's telling you to like bring your banner and like wave your flag. But sometimes you can identify like, oh, Brittany, she mentioned such and such, such. Maybe I can have lunch with her or coffee with her. So the way you do traditional networking, you're now doing that networking with a particular type of, destination you want to get to. And always when it comes to making sure that new jobs are being posted, sending those things to friends and family members and community members who will be qualified. So that's your underlying way. If you're like, I can't quite speak right now, I just got here. Those are sometimes you have those things. I just got this job and I realize we need more Black people. Try and start that networking trend, start those lunches and those small coffee talks, and be intentional. And then when you see jobs available, bring friends in, not friends, but qualified individuals, and that, can also help add to the conversation. So I just like to say that because I've been in times where I'm like, I just need a job. I don't need to do all that.
And I think I know we answered most of them, but a lot of the questions in here have been like, how do you start and how do you know and how, and I just want to, end on kind of saying like, it's important to realize that this is not a race. No one gets a trophy for saying, oh, I have the most minority, I have the most diverse, I have the most. It is truly about being intentional. And if that means taking your time, that's fine. We're just asking that you be transparent about that, and internally and externally. And I know a lot of this conversation has caused a lot of people to clutch their pearls and talk about affirmative action and, oh, I'm going to get fired because Black people need to be hired or minorities or whatever. And it's also realizing, hey, people might not have to step down, but some people are going to have to check their privilege, realize their privilege, and move over to make room. And that's fine. That's not diminishing anyone's worth. That's not, going to change the landscape of your job and your company for anything but the better, and just kind of start looking at things a little bit differently.
And I added to our handouts section on the platform, there's a study from Deloitte. It's called Diversity and Inclusion Revolution, and it walks through much that we talked about today. It'll also take you through 8 powerful truths of really being on the forefront of DEI, and that maturity model that I mentioned of moving from mandate to movement within your organization is referenced there. So I highly recommend that. Is definitely something that we all can do. Download that, print it out. If you're like me, you need to feel the paper and read it and highlight it and then share it with a colleague.
I just want to jump in real quick before we leave. We have just a few moments. And when I thought about putting this panel together and building new tables, it's because I know that all of us here knows how uncomfortable it is to try to fit into jobs. I can tell from experience when I first grew my hair out, people were like, what are your job going to say? You work for the government. I've had to change my name on my resume to Nicole just to get some, people in the communication fields to answer. We know what that feel like. I think building new tables is so important. And I would like to just go around and just very quickly tell the audience, what does it mean for you to build new tables? Like, what does that look like for you? What should that feel like for you? I think that would be really good to leave on.
Well, I'll speak first. I feel like building a new table is creating a homogenous situation that will get us to our goal. So as a blogger and influencer, I want to be able to see all people represented in a specific campaign or specific movement. So taking that time and asking for maybe an extension of another week to say, we just need one more of this person, or we just need one more of that person to make this look the beautiful look that we wanted to do it. And that to me is a very beautiful thought process, because it really shows that we tried, and it is out there to see that we tried, and we've tried to find the people who made it make sense. So that's what it would look like for me.
I would say I would want it to look like the real world. Like we're so like United States is known as the melting pot. Make the real world in the office. Like we're so diverse with different races, different cultures, different everything. So just making that representation on your board, and not just customer service. Like I have to keep going back there, because seeing those numbers, and not just those Warby Parkers, but every industry is like, this is like, they have no say. So that's why a lot of these marketing campaigns were going so wrong. But seeing the United States in the office, like, let's represent everybody, because there's so many people in school specifically for these different industries and fields. Like put them in those positions.
I think for me, building a new table is seeing the holes and the gaps and the opportunities, and actively seeking to correct them, to fill them. I do, like I've said, like events and stuff like that. And it's really been sitting down with people and talking to them, and realize that, we live by the paradigm we know, and I have to go outside of that. I've done things, and I've met with women who say, oh, I love what you're doing. It's fantastic. I don't think it's for me. And it's like, why? Why is it not? And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Because I don't have children. I'm not in my 40s. I'm not. So then being willing to revamp my situations to open even more and to broaden, and kind of always being willing to have a conversation, to look, but then also putting those action steps behind it. I could talk to 1,000 people and bring them to my table, but then what do we do? And so now it's extending on and becoming darn near a picnic table at this point, but that's fine if that's what's needed to make these changes.
And for me, I would say building new tables, excuse me, for me, it looks like making the workplace more equitable, not just more diverse. And as we started out with, that asks the question, what are the conditions that have been created and upheld within the organization such that certain groups are elevated and heard more than others? And I believe real change doesn't happen until you honestly answer that question, and you answer that question from the top down. And once that question is answered and the source of your sameness is identified, then you can do the work to recruit and all of the tactical things that we want to do that are the shiny objects. But it doesn't happen without being real about how we got here, so that we can create a better plan and vision forward.
And I'm going to leave on a much more honest note. As a publicist, and all of us here are experts and creators, and we have just been in our field for a long time. And I feel like building new tables mean that we don't need people of color to be our heroes, right? We need to be pushed up. That means I enjoy having these conversations, but that also means that I want to be hired to speak about public relations and communications without having to talk about being a Black woman, right? That means I want to be brought on the team to help lead a PR campaign that doesn't have to do with just the Black community only, or just being at the lower level, like I'm an intern, right? Been years of experience, years of school. We don't need anyone to be a hero. We need to be able to play on the same, on the same playing field with everyone else. So I think it's looking around the people that are around you, that are in your circle. I think we forget that we have so many people that are already in our circle that we're not already leading up, and we only come to them when we need to talk about topics like this. We've seen so many conversations happen here in Nashville, and you may see a person of color, but if you do see diversity, it's going to be one white woman, and all the rest are going to be men leading these conversations in expert positions. So I say that building new tables means that you no longer get to invite us just to the table just when you want to talk about trauma that surrounds us. That means we're coming to the table as the experts and the professionals that we are. That means that we're moving up in these careers. We're leading these conversations. And when I say leading conversations, I'm not talking about just diversity. I'm talking about conversations in marketing and communications and conversations around data that a lot of us as creators right now, we read all day, right? In order for us to work with the clients that we work with, we're reading those data, we're doing those research and that research. So we are the experts. So you're joining an expert table, and I think that makes people uncomfortable. They don't get to be the heroes. They get to be a part of the team. And that's what I see when I say building the table. So with that, I think we're done unless people have other questions. Anything else the panel wants to add? Anything you got, Brittany?
No, I want to say thank you again to everyone that joined us today. Thank you for your engagement. We felt the energy, would have loved to have been in the room with you, but I think this was a great substitute to that because of your energy and engagement in the conversation. So thank you. And Bonnie, I don't know if you're still on, but I don't know if you had any closing remarks or announcements about the rest of the activities today.
Yes, well, I just wanted to say, wow, I mean, you guys completely blew this conversation out of the water. Brittany and Lakithia, thank you so much for hosting, and to our panelists, Tiff, Melissa, and Tatiana, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this discussion. All of our sessions are recorded, so they will be uploaded to our YouTube page, to the Nashville Design Week channel. So please be on the lookout for that, and let's share this conversation. For those that might not have been able to attend today, I think it's so important that we share this and keep this going, and that we just try to stay connected. So thank you again to our audience. We could not do this without you. So have a great rest of your week. Thank you.